Welcome to Papa Junk Shop. Well, cleaning up from the last project, I ran into this bandsaw that I had sitting around for a long time. It's a smaller one. Figured maybe I could rig it up for woodworking. My big bandsaw, it's got two speeds, one for wood, one for metal. But it's kind of a pain to change the blade every time you want to do wood. So thought I'd rig up this little guy for cutting wood. It's a Montgomery Ward. There's the tag. And I tried doing some research and I didn't find anything looking Montgomery Ward, but I did find pictures and it looks like it was made by the Duro company. And I found a 1935 catalog that had one that looked just like this one. There was a 37 catalog, but the blade guide was different, so I'm thinking this might be around the 1935. And it sold for $18.95. Wow, sure couldn't buy much for that now. And it's called a 9-inch, and the tabletop measures 9 inches, and the throat's about 9 inches. And it's all cast iron. Even this cover is cast iron on the hinge. And the rubber tires on it, I think, are going to be okay. And everything turns okay. Bearings seem good. The tensioner and blade alignment mechanism looks to be okay, with the exception of this knob has been broken off of there. It's not a big deal. The blade guide is really simple, just two on each side, nothing in behind. And I'm thinking that maybe I can add a small ball bearing to this to give it a little support there. And if we look down underneath, yeah, it's not gonna, lighting's not good. Let me get this tipped over. This one-handed camera stuff. Okay, if we look down underneath, the bottom blade guide has been broken off and is missing. And I couldn't find a picture anywhere of what it should look like, so I guess I'm going to design my own. Try to make a replacement part for that. So this is going to be the next project. I'll fill you in as we go along with it. Okay, made some progress with my ball bearing backup for the guide. Here's the original guide, and this is going to be an additional piece that goes on there with it. It's going to mount right on there like that. It can adjust back and forth the same as this can adjust back and forth, and ball bearing's going to go right in this groove here. And I got lucky. I thought this bearing had a 1/4 inch hole, so I grabbed a 1/4 inch bolt out of the drawer and got started on it and discovered that it wasn't 1/4 inch, it was metric. And the bolt that I picked out of the drawer was in the wrong drawer, and turned out to be a 6mm. So I was lucky I had a tap and a 5mm drill to drill the hole. So I got lucky there. And it's a little bit wider, so I got room for a shim on each side. And let me stick it together, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all together. Okay, I got the bearing in there, just a screw in through here, threaded there, a couple of shims, turns real nice. Now how this is going to assemble is this will go on there, and then this will go in between the two. And I figured if that was good enough to hold the guide, then it should be good enough to hold that bearing too. Goes like so, and then I can adjust this in relation to this. So once I get these guides set right for the sides of the blade, then I can move this bearing independent of that. So we should work out good. And that's going to go right there like that. I don't have the guides in there, but that's approximately where it would set. And I just bring this right up to that. Tighten the nut on the bottom. And I don't have it quite close enough. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but the bearing's going around. No, you can't see it because it's not in frame, is it? See if I can get a little better shot. Now, let's pull it right off of there. There, now you can see it. Now I'll go to work on the bottom one. And there you can see a little better. That's all that's left of that. So that'll be the next one. Okay, I got this all propped up with a couple of C-clamps so I can figure out this bottom guide. And I've got a piece of 1 inch thick by I think 1 3/4 this way, 1.5 inches this way, aluminum. And I'm going to attempt to shape to fit in there for the bottom guide. Now there isn't room for a back bearing, so they're just going to be guides for the side of the blade. And what I plan on doing here is I happen to have a 1/4 inch broach, and drill a 1/4 inch pilot hole, run this baby down through, and you'll have a square hole. And then I can use some 1/4 inch key stock for the guides. So we'll get started on designing and fabricating this. Gonna get started squaring up that aluminum block. Thought I'd use a mini mill just because I haven't used it for a while. a little bit on that far corner, so we'll give her one more pass. Thickest cut I've done so far. And it looks like I might need to tweak my mill a little bit. Not quite in trim apparently because I got a little soft there. So we'll do the other two sides and get on with the next move. Okay, I got the aluminum block squared up, got the 1/4 inch hole drilled in, and I started the broach in. My little arbor press wasn't quite high enough, so I started it and just tapped it down through a ways with a hammer. I didn't want to use my hydraulic press because this looks pretty fragile and you can't really feel what's going on. With a hand press you can feel pretty much what's happening. Squirted a little WD-40 on it. I don't know if that's necessary, but figured it couldn't hurt, so here we go. Chips are coming out the bottom. Okay, I'm going to go grab a little punch to get the rest of that through. And there we go. Nice square 1/4 inch hole. I guess next I'll try to figure out where we're going to have the path that goes down through for the blade. And the part that this pivots on and slides back and forth is not really in the middle. So I'm going to have to determine where that is, but that might be one of the last things I do. So I got some material to remove here and a groove there, and so we'll get going on that. Okay, I got a big chunk of the waste stock cut out with a bandsaw. Now we'll get her smoothed up and trued up with the milling machine. We got to take this down to about 7/16. So. milling machines on a cart that got wheels on it, so you see it moving back and forth a little bit. This should be about the last pass. This wants to be 7/16. I'm just going to use the 7/16 wrench to see. That's about right. Okay, I guess the next thing I'll do is determine where my slot wants to be in this, and then we can figure out where the pin's got to go through here to mount it. Okay, I determined the location of the hole, got it drilled and reamed, and I got a little, well, piece of drill rod shoved through from the other side to hold it in place. And now I'll know where the blade is going to wind up on this, so I can mark this and cut the slot here that the blade's going to go in. And I should also be able to determine what I got to cut off right here in order for it to miss the bottom wheel when it is moved out. And I probably could taper this a little bit down here too, just to make it look prettier. But that'll be the next thing, get that groove in there. This will be the last cut for the blade slot. There was 5/16. Okay, I stuck her back on there. Looks like it's going to work. I guess my next move is going to be set screw here and here for the key stock. There's a piece of key stock, and it fits in there really nice. So I still have to cut a little off of here, and I'm probably going to have to take a little off of here in order to have clearance for this little bit of an edge that lays over there. So that'll be the next. Okay, the bottom guide is finished. Got the 1032 set screws in place. Made the cut the 1/4 inch keyway down for the guides. Cut a piece of 3/8 drill rod off, and it was a fairly tight fit, but I put a little Loctite on it anyways, pressed it in there, and kind of rounded off the corners. And this is where she goes, right in there, and this will adjust in and out. And there's a set screw right there. It's just got a screw head in it. I think I'll change that out. And I'll wait and see how, if it stays in place alright. If it doesn't, then I'll put a flat spot on that shaft. But the original one didn't have a flat spot, so I guess the next thing will be to tear this thing apart and get it all cleaned up, and I don't know, might even throw some paint on it, and find a motor, get a motor and get it set up. So I'll show you when I get her apart and get her cleaned up. Okay, I got the bandsaw all torn apart right down to the frame. Everything seems to be pretty good shape, except for a couple things which I'll show you. I'm going to tweak a little bit, but frame seems to be good. See any issues with it? Bearings are good. One thing I did find is this tilt adjustment. I need to put a knob on this end, and this end here's got a little bit of a bend. Maybe it tipped over or something one time. Maybe that's how this knob got broke. Get that straightened up. And this part that tightens the blade, these set screws that have the end turned down, you can still see the threads in there. Seem a little bit tight in this groove. There's a couple places where it doesn't go real smooth, so I might pop them in the lathe and just touch them with a file, get them cleared up a little bit. Other than that, I think it's just going to be a matter of cleaning it up. Now the table mount, I thought I had a repair here because it was welded. But when I look at the other end, it's also welded. And then the inside is welded. So I think that was the way they manufactured it. So we'll get her all cleaned up, give her some paint, get her together, see how she works. Okay, I've been making some progress. About the only thing I got to do yet is clean up the frame and get some paint on it. This blade tensioner, I got it all refurbished. Now these pieces here that I was going to touch up with the file, I put them in the lathe and I turned them just a whisker, and I tried them and they still didn't seem right, so what I needed to do was go a little bit deeper with them. So they went in the groove a little further. Now it seems to work fine. And I got a knob on the tilt adjustment, got the thread straightened out, and this nut that goes down in the bottom of this right in there, I discovered has one side ground down, and so I touched that up a little bit and rounded these corners a little more because of the casting. Because I noticed that when I had it on the bandsaw, that when I used this tilt mechanism, it didn't tilt very much at all. Now I've got a pretty good range. And so that cured that. So this part's all ready to go. Got this thing all cleaned up. All these bolts and nuts cleaned up. I got the table turned out pretty nice. You can actually see the grind pattern in it yet. It's really nice and smooth. There's some staining on it. Makes it look kind of bad. But it's really pretty nice. And I got an insert made out of a little piece of aluminum. That'll go right in there like so. And what else did I get done? Oh, this thing here is pretty neat. This is the table lock, and what they did is they've got this piece machined so that it fits this cradle on the inside like so. So when you tip it, that slides. And then what they've done is, looks like they just brazed a big old lock washer on there to get this inclined plane, I guess you would call it. And then this handle, which is made out of brass, is machined with the same type of incline, and that just fits on there, and that gives you that cam action to lock it in place. Pretty simple, pretty neat. So I think my next move is get this baby here cleaned up and painted, and then we can reassemble. I got the frame and the guard cleaned up, and in the process kind of reminded me of some of the stuff like Harbor Freight and Grizzly and you know that stuff made in China. When you buy it, you got to tear it apart and rebuild it. That's sort of what this reminds me of. The castings are kind of crude. I don't know if I sight in on that enough, but look at that flash there on the inside. Then there's another spot right there that there was some flashing, and they ground it down, but they didn't get it ground down enough, and you can see where the blade's been hitting. I don't imagine them wood blades like that cast iron very well. So I'm going to do a little bit cleaning up on these castings before I paint them. Just thought I'd let you in on that. Well, we got some paint on the framework and the guard and the table and the parts that needed painted. Went over on the shelf and this can of Sherwin-Williams Chem Luster Enamel Dark Green is what my hand had on, so that's what we painted her. Really nice paint. Put her on with a brush. One coat. Not like the new stuff. I also painted the wheels. I painted them a gray color. They had that speckled finish on it and it was all peeling off and didn't look good, so painted them gray. I think the next thing I'm going to do is find that motor. There's the wheels. I went up and found a really old motor. Kind of goes along with the bandsaw. Matter of fact, it's a little older than the bandsaw. It's a Westinghouse. It's even got the terminals on the outside. Not exactly the safest thing in the world, but
thought it was pretty cool. And I put a cord on it. It takes right off and runs nice. I don't have very many motors to choose from anymore, so it's not 1725 RPM. I think it says it's a 6th horsepower. Hopefully it's enough. Of course, I'm not going to be doing resawing and stuff, just some little stuff on this saw. So here's a close-up of the tag if you can see it. And the lighting is not good here. I got to get the camera so close that no matter what I do, I can't get the lighting right. But the newest patent date on it is 9/17 of 18. Single phase, 1/6 horsepower, continuous, 60 cycles, 110 volts, 3.8 amps, 1725. So I'm going to give it a whirl on there. If it doesn't work, then we'll have to find something else, but that's what I'm going to try for. I started cleaning this motor up, and I think I discovered one of the reasons why it's in good shape. On the bottom side of the motor, now I'll turn this upside down, you can see there's a provision for lubrication. And there's a hole that goes all the way up in, and you guys probably aren't going to be able to see this, but you can actually see the motor shaft. And what they had is this little oil cup with a spring-loaded wick in it. And there's a spring down there that pushes up on it, and you fill that up with oil, and it still has oil in it. And that wick goes in this hole and carries oil up to that shaft constantly. So I'm thinking that's one of the reasons why it's in good shape. Just thought I'd share that with you.
Okay, after I got it together, I did a little more tweaking, got things adjusted a little better. Got a blade on it. Well, it's the original blade. Come with it. And cut out a piece of wood, got the motor mounted. The manual said for cutting wood you should have a 4-inch pulley on the drive and a 2-inch pulley on the motor, and that's what was on it, was a 4-inch, and I found a 2-inch for the motor, so we should be all set there. My guides all seem to be working okay. Now I got to put a, I think I'm going to mount a handy box right here with a switch. That still allows me to open the door and everything alright, have access. And I had some, still had some LED lights left from the 2 milling machine project, so I made a little light assembly. And going to mount that right up in here. So it'll shine down, and hopefully these will shine over this way. So we'll get that rigged up. So I'm going to work on that, getting the wiring and that stuff set up, and then we should be able to give it a try, I believe. Okay, got the light mounted, got the handy box and the switches mounted, got the wires on the motor, made sure I had a ground on the motor, and of course this is all grounded, so everything is grounded. Was debating on whether to make a belt guard, but I got so many other things that doesn't have belt guard, and I'm pretty aware of things, so I think we should be good. There she goes. I'm pretty quiet. Place I got a piece of, I think this is cherry, rough cut. Seems like the guides seem to be working alright. Quite a thin cut there. I think that motor's going to be alright. Not in any hurry. You go slower, you usually don't make as many mistakes. Just a piece of 2x4. And maybe some of you are wondering why I just didn't get one of those outlets with a switch already in it. Well, I didn't have one. And I didn't have any handy boxes left either, so I thought, well, I'll get one when I go to the store. Well, they're like $13 for one of them now. So I thought, I'm going to make my own. So I just took an outlet, got rid of half of it. I had a whole bunch of these surface mount switches, so that's my version of it. So guess this project is done, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'll give you a walk around of it. see my homemade blade guide. And there's one on the bottom. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's the LED light strip installed. So, I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. This project took me quite a while. I decided to try something I never tried before. I guess it's called Vertigo or something. I was working on this, as a matter of fact, and I started getting dizzy and decided maybe I better go in the house. And my garage is only about 10 feet from the house, and I had to hang on to stuff to make it in the house. And it only got worse from there, so I wound up I think 4 days with that, and then we had a friend that we had to take to Erie to the doctor, so I lost 5 days on this project, so it's been kind of a long one for me. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you like. See you next time.